The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched out like a metal ocean. Thousands of seats rose in circles around the center stage. Each seat held a different alien being. Some had scales that shimmered like rainbow glass. Others had tentacles that moved like liquid silk. A few looked like walking rocks with glowing eyes. The air hummed with translation devices working to turn hundreds of languages into something everyone could understand. Kite Park sat in the human section. His dark suit looked simple next to the fancy robes and armor worn by other diplomats. He kept his hands folded on his lap and his face calm. Next to him, Dr. So-Min Lee tapped notes on her datapad. She watched the other aliens with the careful eyes of someone who studied alien behavior for a living. The morning session had been boring. Talk about trade routes. Arguments about mining rights. The usual stuff that made half the delegates fall asleep in their seats. Kite had been to dozens of these meetings. They all felt the same. Then Chancellor Vexthara stood up. The Kethian leader looked like a walking crystal sculpture. Her body caught the hall's lights and threw rainbow patterns on the walls. When she moved, tiny bells seemed to ring in the air around her. Every eye in the hall turned to look at her. Even the sleeping delegates woke up. When Vexthara spoke, people listened. "Fellow members of the council," she began. Her voice was like music made of ice. "Today I must speak about a problem that threatens our great alliance." Kite felt his stomach tighten. Something in her tone warned him that trouble was coming. "For too long we have allowed weakness to hide behind the mask of diplomacy," Vexthara continued. "For too long we have pretended that cowardice is the same as wisdom." Murmurs started to spread through the hall. Delegates leaned forward in their seats. This was not the usual boring council talk. This was something different. I speak, of course, about the humans. The hall went quiet. Kite felt every alien eye turned toward the human section. Dr. So-Min Lee stopped typing and looked up. Her face stayed calm, but Kite could see the worry in her eyes. "The human species," Vexthara said, "has shown us their true nature time and again. When brave warriors of many species joined together to fight the pirates in Sector 7, where were the humans? When the Outer Rim colonies cried for help against raiders, where were the humans? When courage was needed, when strength was required, the humans chose to hide. The crystal being's voice grew louder. They send us lawyers instead of soldiers. They offer us papers to sign instead of weapons to fight with. They speak of peace treaties when what we need is strong action." More murmurs filled the hall. Kite noticed that many aliens were nodding their heads. Some even made sounds of agreement in their own languages. "The humans call themselves members of this great council," Vexthara continued. "But what have they contributed? What battles have they won? What enemies have they defeated? Nothing. They are war-fearing creatures who hide behind others when danger comes." A large, green-skinned delegate from the warrior clan stood up. "The Chancellor speaks truth," he said in a voice like grinding rocks. "My people have fought in 17 major conflicts since joining this council. The humans have fought in none." Another alien, this one covered in blue fur, added her voice. "When the Shadow Fleet attacked our trade routes, we asked all species for help. The humans sent negotiators. While our ships burned, they wanted to talk to the pirates about surrender terms." The hall filled with more voices. Alien after alien shared stories about human cowardice, about times when humans chose to talk instead of fight, about how humans always found excuses to avoid conflict. General Kalthik, the council's military commander, rose from his seat. He was a massive creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a tank. Scars covered his armored hide from dozens of battles. "Perhaps," he said in a voice that could crack stone, "we have made a mistake. Perhaps beings who fear war should not have a voice in military matters. How can creatures who run from every fight help us make decisions about defense and security?" The crowd cheered. Aliens stamped their feet, clapped their hands, or made whatever noise their species used to show approval. The sound was like thunder in the great hall. Ki-Te sat perfectly still. His face showed nothing. Inside, he felt something cold and hard. Growing in his chest, Dr. So-Min Lee reached over and touched his arm gently. She knew him well enough to see the warning signs. Chancellor Vexthara raised her crystal arms for silence. The hall slowly quieted down. "I do not say these things to be cruel," she said. "I say them because truth must be spoken. The humans are not evil. They are simply limited. They lack the warrior spirit that built our great civilization. They cannot understand that sometimes violence is necessary. Sometimes war is the only answer." She turned to look directly at Kite. Her crystal eyes reflected the hall's lights like tiny stars. They fear war because they have never truly known it. They have lived safe lives on their protected worlds while others fought and died for freedom. This is why they always choose the path of the coward. This is why they speak of peace when what we need is strength. The hall erupted in applause again. Aliens from dozens of species cheered and called out agreement. Some even started chanting words in their own languages that the translators turned into truth. Truth, truth. Kite felt Dr. So-Min Lee's grip tighten on his arm. Captain Haijin Nam, their military advisor, was sitting 3 rows back. He could see her hand moving slowly toward her communication device. Chancellor Vexthara let the noise continue for a full minute before raising her arms again. "And so," she said when the hall was quiet, "I formally request that the human representative answer these charges. Let Ambassador Kite Park tell us why his species deserves to remain in this council when they contribute nothing but fear and weakness to our alliance." Every eye in the hall turned to Kite. The silence was so complete that he could hear the hum of the translation devices. Somewhere in the back of the hall, someone coughed. Day-Te stood up slowly. He was not a tall man, and he looked small surrounded by all the massive alien beings. But something in the way he moved made the hall go even quieter. "I will answer," he said simply. His voice was calm and quiet, but somehow everyone heard him clearly. The translation devices picked up his words and sent them to every ear in the hall. Chancellor Vexthara smiled. Her crystal face looked pleased, like someone who had just won an easy game. "The floor is yours, Ambassador," she said. "Tell us why humans should be taken seriously by warriors." Kite looked around the hall. He saw thousands of alien faces looking back at him. Some looked curious, some looked hostile. A few looked sorry for him, like they were watching someone about to be destroyed. Dr. So-Min Lee was watching him carefully. Captain Nam had her hand on her communication device, ready to call for backup if things went bad. Ki-Te took a deep breath. When he spoke, his voice was still quiet, still calm, but there was something new in it now. Something that made a few of the older aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Before I answer your accusations," he said, "I have a question for all of you." He paused and looked around the hall one more time. "How many of you remember the Terran integration wars?" The silence that followed Kite's question was different from before. This was not the quiet of an audience waiting for entertainment. This was the silence of creatures who suddenly realized they might have made a terrible mistake. Kite remained standing. He did not move to the center stage like most speakers did. Instead, he stayed exactly where he was, speaking from his seat in the human section. Somehow, this made his words carry more weight. 150 years ago, he said, his voice still calm and measured, humanity made first contact with galactic civilization. We were a young species. We had just learned to travel between stars. Our technology was simple compared to yours. A few aliens shifted in their seats. Dr. So-Min Lee activated a small holographic projector on her datapad. Images began to appear in the air above the human section. "We were excited to meet other intelligent life," Kite continued. "We came in peace, hoping to learn and trade and become part of something greater than ourselves." The hologram showed a small human ship approaching a massive alien space station. The ship looked tiny and fragile next to the alien structure. "The first species we met was the Corvan Empire," Kite said. The hologram changed to show the meeting. Human diplomats in simple clothes faced tall, proud-looking aliens in golden armor. "We offered friendship. We offered trade agreements. We offered to share our knowledge and culture." Chancellor Vexthara's crystal form had stopped glowing so brightly. Some of the older delegates were starting to look uncomfortable. The Corvan Empire's response, Kite said, was to capture our diplomats and sell them as slaves. They decided that humans would make good workers for their mining colonies. The hologram showed human prisoners in chains being loaded onto alien ships. The hall was completely silent now. Within days of that first meeting, Kite continued, the Corvan Empire launched a full invasion of human space. They brought 2,000 warships. They had conquered dozens of species before us. They expected an easy victory. Captain Haijin Nam stood up from her seat in the back. She walked slowly down the aisle toward the human section. Other aliens watched her move, noting the way she carried herself, like a predator trying very hard to look harmless. At the same time, Kite said, the Gil Confederacy decided they wanted to study human biology. They attacked our outer colonies, capturing entire cities full of people for their experiments. The hologram showed burning human cities. Ships fleeing into space while alien vessels pursued them. The Apex Syndicate saw an opportunity as well, Kite went on. They attacked our trade routes, stealing our ships and enslaving our crews. 3 different civilizations attacked humanity simultaneously, each thinking we would be easy prey. Dr. Bio-Rem Choi, the human historian, had quietly entered the hall during Kite's speech. She now stood near the back, her arms full of data storage devices. Historical records that most of the galaxy preferred to forget. You call us war-fearing, Kite said. His voice was still quiet, but there was something new in it now, something cold. But you seem to have forgotten what happened next. The hologram changed again. This time it showed star maps. Red areas marked Corvan Empire territory. Blue showed the Gil Confederacy. Green was the Apex Syndicate. A tiny yellow dot in the corner showed human space. The Corvan Empire ruled 127 star systems, Kite said. They had been the dominant military power in this region for over 2,000 years. Their fleet was legendary. Their warriors were feared across the galaxy. He paused. The hall was so quiet that the hum of the air recycling system seemed loud. It took humanity 8 months to destroy them completely. Several aliens made sounds of shock. A few stood up from their seats, as if they wanted to leave but were afraid to move. The hologram showed the progression of the war. The yellow area of human space began to grow. Red Corvan territory started disappearing. Week by week, system by system, the ancient empire was being erased. The Gil Confederacy had ruled for even longer, Kite continued. They possessed the most advanced military technology in 3 sectors. Their battle fleets had never known defeat. They considered themselves the ultimate warriors. The blue area on the hologram began shrinking as well. They surrendered after. We destroyed their moon. General Kalfik, who had been so confident before, was now gripping the arms of his chair so tightly that the metal was bending. Not their homeworld, Kite clarified. Just their moon. We turned it to dust as a warning. Shot. The Gil Confederacy's government contacted us the next day to discuss surrender terms. The hologram showed a massive debris field where a moon had once orbited a blue-green planet. The Apex Syndicate lasted the longest, Kite said. 11 months. They were raiders and pirates, experts in hit-and-run tactics. They knew how to hide, how to strike fast and disappear. They thought their mobility would save them. The green area on the hologram was shrinking too, but more slowly than the others. We hunted them through 17 different star systems. We tracked them to hidden bases in asteroid fields and nebulae. We found them in dimensions they thought were secret. When we were finished, there were no Apex Syndicate ships left in the galaxy. Not one. Dr. So-Min Lee added more data to the hologram, casualty reports, fleet strengths, battle records that most species had hoped were lost forever. In 18 months, Kite said, humanity went from being the victim of a 3-way invasion to controlling more territory than any single species in galactic history. Chancellor Vexthara finally found her voice. Those are old stories. she said, but her crystal form was dimming with what looked like fear. Ancient history, things were different then. Kite turned to look at her directly. When he smiled, it was not a pleasant expression. You think humanity has grown weak since then? He asked. You think we have forgotten how to fight? Captain. Nam reached the human section and took her position next to Kite. She activated her own communication device, and suddenly the hall's main display screens came to life. Let me tell you what happened after those wars ended, Kite said. The surviving species of the galaxy came together in panic. They created this council not to promote peace and cooperation, but to protect themselves from us. The screen showed the original council charter. The real one, not the sanitized version that newer species were shown. The truth was written in the old legal language, but the meaning was clear. The council existed to contain humanity. Every demilitarized zone in the galaxy, Kite continued, every neutral territory, every peacekeeping agreement was designed with one purpose: to keep human forces away from populated areas. More documents appeared on the screens: military planning files, strategic assessments. All of them focused on the same question: how to prevent humanity from starting another war. You created buffer zones around our territory, Kite said. You established cultural exchange programs to monitor our activities. You insisted on diplomatic solutions to every problem because you were terrified of what would happen if we decided to solve things our way. Admiral Insuyun entered the hall. His presence was like a cold wind. Other aliens instinctively moved away from him as he walked down the aisle. He wore a simple uniform, but somehow he looked more dangerous than aliens in full battle armor. The galaxy has lived in peace for 150 years, Kite said. Not because you have learned to get along with each other, not because wisdom has triumphed over violence, but because humanity has chosen to let you live. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Several aliens were now openly showing signs of panic. A few had begun moving toward the exits. Every time there has been a conflict in the past century and a half, Kite continued. Every time. Someone suggested that maybe force was the answer. Cooler heads have prevailed. Do you know why? He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as he could. Because someone always remembers to ask the same question: what will the humans do? Chancellor Vexthara tried to speak, but no words came out. Her crystal form was barely glowing now. The answer, Kite said, has always been the same. The humans will end it. Not win it, not resolve it. End it, completely, permanently, with nothing left behind to remember what came before. Dr. Ram. Troy stepped forward with her historical records. She began uploading files to the Council's database. Battle reports, casualty figures, technical analyses of human weapons systems, information that had been classified for over a century. You want to know why we did not join your Sector 7 campaign? Kite asked. Why we sent lawyers instead of soldiers? Why we always choose diplomacy over war? The hall was dead silent. Even the air recycling system seemed to have stopped working. Kite's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every being in the hall heard him clearly. Because we are not war-fearing, Chancellor Vexthara. We are not cowards who hide from battle. He paused, letting the words sink in. We are the reason that none of you remember what real war looks like. The atmosphere in the hall had changed completely. What had started as a confident attack on human weakness had become something much more frightening. Aliens who had been cheering minutes before now sat frozen in their seats. Some were quietly trying to contact their home governments. Others were calculating how quickly they could reach the exits. Key-Tay remained perfectly calm. He stood in the same spot, speaking in the same quiet voice. But now every word carried the weight of absolute truth. Let me share some facts with you, he said. Facts that your governments know but prefer not to discuss. Dr. So-Min Lee activated more displays. Technical specifications began filling the screens around the hall. Ship designs, weapon systems, industrial capacity reports, numbers that made several alien delegates gasp in shock. Humanity currently operates 17,000 active warships, Kite stated. This does not include patrol vessels, support ships, or defensive platforms. Just frontline combat vessels designed for deep space warfare. General Kalthik found his voice. Impossible, he rumbled. The Council monitors all military construction. We would know about such a fleet. Admiral Insuyun stepped forward. His uniform bore no decorations, no rank insignia that aliens could recognize. But something about the way he moved made hardened warriors nervous. You monitor construction? In normal space, the Admiral said. We build in folded dimensions. Shipyards that exist outside your ability to detect. Manufacturing facilities that fold space around themselves to remain hidden. The displays showed images that hurt to look at. Structures that seemed to twist. Reality around them. Shipyards larger than moons, building vessels that looked more like mogul cities than traditional warships. Every human colony world, Kite continued, has been converted into a fortress system. Not just defended, weaponized, each one is capable of destroying entire fleets without assistance. More images appeared. Peaceful-looking planets surrounded by invisible defensive grids. Moons that were actually weapon platforms. Asteroid belts that were mining operations and military bases combined. The human colony of New Sol looks like a farming world, Kite said. It has beautiful cities, green fields, happy families. It also has enough firepower to sterilize everything in a 50 light-year radius. Engineer Daeyoon Kim entered the hall carrying a small device. She approached the human section and began setting up what looked like a simple demonstration model. This is a scale representation of our current military capability, she announced. Her voice was professional, like a teacher explaining a science project. The flashing lights represent active combat units. Blue for ships, red for defensive platforms, green for mobile weapon systems. The device activated. The hall filled with thousands of tiny lights. Blue lights form massive clusters. Around certain areas, red lights created defensive rings around entire star systems. Green lights moved in patterns that suggested patrol routes covering impossible amounts of space. Each light represents approximately 1,000 actual units, Engineer Kim explained. The math was terrifying. Millions of weapons platforms. Hundreds of thousands of warships. Defensive systems that span multiple star systems. Chancellor Vexthara managed to speak. Why? She whispered. Why build such forces if you never intend to use them? Kite looked at her with something that might have been pity. Because we learned from our first contact with galactic civilization, he said. We learned that the galaxy is full of species who see peaceful neighbors as easy targets. We decided that would never happen again. Colonel Jun-Ho Lee appeared at the back of the hall. He was head of Terran's strategic intelligence, and his presence meant that humanity was taking this conversation very seriously. Every species in this council, Kite continued, exists because we allow it to exist. Every war that has been prevented in the past century happened because someone asked what humanity would do if the conflict escalated. The displays changed again. This time they showed probability calculations, war games, strategic analyses that had been run thousands of times by human computers. Your Sector 7 campaign, Kite said, addressing the earlier accusation. Our strategic computers analyzed that conflict thoroughly. Full human involvement would have resulted in complete victory within 72 hours. General Kalthik leaned forward. Then why did you not help us? Victory in 3 days would have saved thousands of lives. Kite's expression grew colder. Because victory would have come at the cost of 17 species being completely destroyed. The hall erupted in confused murmurs. Aliens looked at each other, trying to understand what Kite meant. Dr. Bo Ram Choi stepped forward with more historical data. Battle analysis reports, casualty projections, information that painted a terrifying picture of what human military doctrine actually looked like. Human warfare does not recognize the concept of proportional response, she explained. When we commit to military action, we commit completely. We do not fight battles, we eliminate threats. The displays showed simulation results. Computer models of what the Sector 7 campaign would have looked like with human involvement. The pirates would have been destroyed in the first hour, but the shockwaves from human weapons would have sterilized dozens of nearby systems. Allied forces caught in the combat zone would have been vaporized along with the enemy. 17 species would have gone extinct, Kite repeated. Including most of your own forces, General. The pirates you were hunting would have been destroyed, so completely that not even their atoms would remain. But everything within 100 light-years would have been caught in the effect. That is monstrous, Chancellor Vexthara breathed. That is war, Kite replied simply. Real war. The kind that ends civilizations. The kind you have all forgotten because we have spent a century and a half making sure you never had to experience it. Captain Haijin Nam activated her communication systems. Suddenly, the hall speakers came alive with radio chatter. Voices speaking in dozens of languages, all translating to the same message. Human military forces were moving. What you are hearing, Kite explained, is normal communication. Traffic from our defense fleets. This is what constant vigilance sounds like. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For the past 150 years, human forces have been ready to respond to any threat in the galaxy. The radio chatter continued. Fleet movements, patrol schedules, weapons maintenance reports. The sheer volume of military activity was overwhelming. Every pirate raid that has been stopped, Kite said. Every trade route that has remained safe. Every colony that has not been attacked. This happened because potential aggressors knew that human forces were watching. Admiral Insuyun added his voice to Kite's presentation. We have prevented 47 major conflicts in the past century, he stated. Not through negotiation, not through peace treaties, but by making it clear to all potential combatants that human intervention would result in their complete destruction. The displays showed a galactic map marked with conflict zones that had never developed into actual wars. Dozens of potential battlefields where peace had been maintained through the threat of human involvement. The Kethian-Vorthan border dispute, Admiral Yun continued, reading from a list, resolved when both sides received intelligence reports. On human weapon capabilities, the Outer Rim mining wars, ended when we deployed a single scout ship to the region. The Syndicate uprising of 2387 collapsed when the rebels learned that humanity considered them a potential threat. Each example drove home the same point. Peace in the galaxy was not the result of diplomacy or wisdom. It was the result of fear. Fear of what humanity would do if forced to take action. You call us war-fearing, Kite said, bringing his speech to a focus. But fear implies that we might lose. Fear suggests that the outcome is uncertain. He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as possible. We do not fear war, Chancellor Vexthara. War fears us. The silence that followed was absolute. No alien moved. No one spoke. Even the communication chatter from human forces had gone quiet. Every day that we choose peace, Kite continued, every time we send diplomats instead of soldiers, every moment that we show restraint, we are making a conscious decision to allow the rest of the galaxy to continue existing. Engineer Kims. The demonstration device was still flashing with thousands of lights representing human military forces. The visual reminder of humanity's overwhelming power made Kite's words even more frightening. You want to know why we avoided your Sector 7 campaign? Kite asked one final time. It was not because we were afraid. It was because we were being merciful. He paused, letting that word sink in. Mercy, he repeated. A concept that most species associate with weakness. But mercy requires strength. It requires the power to destroy your enemies combined with the wisdom to choose not to. Chancellor Vexthara was no longer glowing at all. Her crystal form had become completely transparent, as if she was trying to disappear. Humanity practices mercy every day, Kite said. Every day that your species continues to exist is a gift from us to you. The hall remained silent. Aliens sat frozen in their seats, afraid to move, afraid to speak, afraid to do anything that might be interpreted. As a threat, Kite looked around the hall one more time. When he spoke again, his voice was soft, almost gentle. The request hung in the air like a death sentence. Several aliens had begun quietly moving toward the exits, but they froze when Kite spoke again. "You want proof," he said simply. "Very well." General Kalthik, perhaps realizing that events had spiraled far beyond his control, tried to backtrack. "Ambassador, perhaps we have heard enough?" "There is no need for... There is every need," Kite interrupted. His voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath it now. "The Chancellor has accused humanity of cowardice before the entire galactic community. She has demanded proof of our capabilities. It would be rude to refuse such a direct request." "Chancellor." Vexthara's crystal form flickered with panic. "I withdraw my statements," she said quickly. "There is no need for any demonstration. I apologize for any offense." "Too late," Kite said. He turned to Captain Haijin Nam. "Captain, please establish contact with Commander Sujin Bei." Captain Nam activated her communication system. The hall's main speakers came alive with the sound of a quantum connection being established. The quality was perfect, as if the person on the other end was standing in the room. "Sole command to Council Chambers," came a clear female voice. Commander Bei responding. "How can we assist you today, Ambassador?" "Commander," Kite said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's communication system. "We have a situation here. The Galactic Council has questioned humanity's military capabilities. They seem to think we have grown weak." There was a pause. When Commander Bei spoke again, there was amusement in her voice. "I see. What level of demonstration are you requesting?" "Sir?" Kite looked around the hall. Thousands of alien faces stared back at him. Some showed fear, others curiosity. A few showed the kind of horrified fascination that comes from watching something terrible unfold. "Something visible to the entire galaxy," Kite said. "Something that will settle this question permanently." "Understood, Ambassador. We have the perfect test site prepared. Operation Clarity has been ready for deployment for several months now. All we need is your authorization." Dr. So-Min Lee activated the hall's main display screens. They showed a view of space filled with stars and nebulae. In the center of the display was a massive asteroid field, stretching across several light-years of space. "The Kalar asteroid field," Commander Bei's voice explained. "Located in the neutral zone, approximately 400 light-years from the nearest inhabited system. No life-bearing worlds within 50 light-years. Perfect for testing purposes." The asteroids in the field were enormous. Some were larger than Earth's moon. The entire field contained more mass than most solar systems. "Commander," Kite said, "please proceed with Operation Clarity." "Roger that, Ambassador. Beginning decloak sequence now." The display changed. What had appeared to be empty space around the asteroid field began to shimmer. Shapes started to become visible. First one, then dozens. Then hundreds of objects that had been hidden until now. The aliens in the hall began making sounds of shock and fear. The objects becoming visible were ships, but ships unlike anything in the galactic database. They were enormous, sleek, and carried weapon systems that hurt to look at directly. Fleet Admiral Teho Park, commanding the Terran Deep. "Space Task Force," came a new voice through the speakers. "All ships report ready for demonstration. Awaiting final authorization." Kite looked directly at Chancellor Vexthara. "Last chance to withdraw your accusations, Chancellor." The crystal being tried to speak, but no words came out. She managed. Only a weak shake of her head. "Very well," Kite said. "Fleet Admiral, you are authorized to proceed." "Understood." "All ships prepare for synchronized discharge." "Target, complete field erasure." "Energy level, minimal demonstration only." The display showed the human ships arranging themselves in a perfect formation around the asteroid field. Each ship was easily the size of a small moon, and there were hundreds of them. "Charging weapon systems," Admiral Park's voice reported. "All ships ready. firing in 3.2. Discharge. What happened next defied description. The asteroid field, which had existed for millions of years and contained more mass than entire solar systems, simply ceased to exist, not destroyed. Not shattered, not vaporized, erased, the space where it had been was now completely empty, as if it had never contained anything at all. The hall erupted in chaos. Aliens screamed, fainted, or began praying in their native languages. Several delegates collapsed entirely. General Kalthik was gripping his chair so tightly that his claws had torn through the metal. Demonstration complete, Admiral Park reported calmly. Field erasure successful, no debris remaining. Space-time has stabilized in the target zone. Kite waited for the noise in the hall to die down before speaking again. When he did, his voice was as calm as if he had just ordered coffee. That asteroid field, he said, contained approximately 12 billion tons of matter. The energy required to erase it from existence exceeds the total power output of the Kethian Dominion for the past 1,000 years. He turned to look at Chancellor Vexthara, who was no longer visible at all. Her crystal form had become completely transparent with shock. The weapons used in this demonstration, Kite continued, are considered standard equipment on our patrol vessels. What you just witnessed represents less than 0.3% of our current military capacity. Dr. Somin Lee added new data to the displays, technical specifications that made the demonstration even more terrifying. Energy measurements, weapon efficiency ratings, casualty projections for what would happen if such weapons were used against populated targets. A single ship from that fleet, she explained in her professional scientist voice, carries enough firepower to sterilize every inhabited world in the Corvan sector. The fleet you just observed represents one task force out of 73, currently deployed throughout human space. The math was beyond horrifying. If one task force could erase asteroid fields from existence, what could 73 do? What could the full might of humanity accomplish if it chose to act? Commander Bay's voice came through the speakers again. Ambassador, shall we proceed to Phase 2 of the demonstration? We have several inhabited systems that have been causing diplomatic problems lately. The hall went completely silent. Several aliens stopped breathing entirely. That will not be necessary, Commander, Kite said quickly. I believe we have made our point. Understood, sir. All ships returning to stealth mode. Operation Clarity concluded successfully. The human ships began to fade from view again, disappearing back into whatever hidden dimensions they used for concealment. Within moments, the display showed nothing but empty space where moments before had been the most powerful military force in galactic history, fleet. Admiral Tejo Park's voice came through one final time. Ambassador, for the record, the weapon. Systems used in this demonstration were set to minimum power. Full discharge would have affected an area approximately 10,000 times larger. The implication hung in the air like a physical weight. Full power would have erased not just the asteroid field, but everything within hundreds of light years. Entire star systems would have been wiped from existence. Kite looked around the hall. Aliens who had been demanding proof of human courage were now trembling with terror. Some were quietly crying. Others sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they had witnessed. You wanted to know why we choose diplomacy over warfare, Kite said. His voice was gentle now, almost kind. You wanted to understand why we send negotiators instead of soldiers. He gestured toward the display, which still showed the empty space where the asteroid field had been. This is why, he said simply. Because when humanity wages war, there is no battle. There is no conflict. There is no struggle between opposing forces. There is only before and after, with nothing remaining in between to mark the transition. Chancellor. Vexthara finally managed to speak. Her voice was barely a whisper. We understand now. Do you? Kite asked. Do you truly understand what you have been asking us to become? He looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as he could. Every day that we choose peace, he said, every time we offer negotiation instead of annihilation, We are making a conscious decision to let your civilizations continue existing. We are choosing mercy over efficiency." The silence stretched. No alien dared to move or speak. "The question now," Kite said, "is whether you can live with that knowledge." The great hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. Thousands of beings sat in perfect silence, afraid to move, afraid to breathe, afraid to do anything that might remind humanity of their presence. The demonstration had ended, but its effects would last forever. Kite remained standing in the same spot, where he had begun his response to Chancellor Vexthara's accusations. But everything had changed. The human section was no longer the quiet corner where weak diplomats sat. It had become the most important place in the galaxy. "I can see that many of you are struggling to process what you have witnessed," Kite said gently. His voice was kind now, like a teacher helping confused students. "Let me help you understand what this means for our future together." Dr. So-Min Lee activated new displays. Instead of weapon specifications and casualty projections, these showed peaceful images, trade routes, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation agreements, all the things that made galactic civilization work. "For 150 years, Kite continued, humanity has been your silent guardian. We have prevented wars you never knew were coming. We have stopped invasions before they could begin. We have maintained peace not through treaties or agreements, but through the simple fact of our existence." Several aliens were now openly weeping. The weight of realization was crushing. Every moment of peace they had enjoyed, every day their species had survived, had been a gift from humanity. "The Vorthan expansion crisis of 2341, Kite said, beginning to list examples. "Your history books say it ended when the Vorthans suddenly decided to respect existing borders. The truth is that we sent them a single message: expand further and face extinction. They chose wisely." Dr. Bio-Ram Choi stepped forward with more historical records, files that told the real story of galactic peace. Not the sanitized version taught in schools, but the truth about how many conflicts had been prevented by human intervention. "The Great Plague of 2398, Kite continued. "According to official records, it was stopped by brilliant medical research and international cooperation. Actually, human scientists developed the cure in 6 hours and distributed it secretly through our intelligence networks." More examples followed. Natural disasters that had been quietly prevented. Economic collapses that had been avoided through careful human intervention. Terrorist attacks that had been stopped before they could begin. "Every time your governments faced a crisis too big to handle," Kite explained, "humanity stepped in silently to provide solutions we never asked for. Credit, we never demanded payment. We simply acted because allowing civilizations to collapse would have been wasteful." Chancellor Vexthara managed to find her voice again. Her crystal form was still dim, but she was no longer completely transparent. "Why?" she whispered. "Why protect us? Why not simply, rule us directly?" Kite looked at her with genuine surprise. "Rule you? Chancellor, what would be the point of that?" He gestured around the hall, taking in all the different species present. "Look at what you have accomplished," he said. "The Kethians create art that moves souls across species barriers. The Vorthans have developed mathematics that unlock the secrets of space and time. The Gentarum compose music that can heal psychological trauma. Every species here contributes something unique and valuable to galactic civilization." Dr. So-Min Lee added her voice to Kite's explanation. "From humanity's perspective, you are not subjects to be ruled. You are colleagues to be protected. Partners in building something greater than any single species could achieve alone." The concept seemed to stun many aliens. They had spent so long thinking in terms of dominance and submission that the idea of genuine cooperation was hard to grasp. "But surely," General Kalthik said hesitantly, "surely humanity expects something in return for this protection?" Kite smiled. It was the first genuinely warm expression he had shown since the session began. "We get exactly what we wanted from the beginning," he said. "Friends, teachers, students, fellow explorers of the universe. A galaxy full of different perspectives and ideas and dreams. Captain Minryu stepped forward from the back of the hall. He represented the Diplomatic Corps' military wing, and his presence signaled that humanity was about to make official policy statements. However, Kite continued, his tone becoming more serious, recent events have made it clear that some adjustments to our relationship are necessary. The hall tensed. Every alien present suddenly wondered if they had pushed humanity too far. If the demonstration had been a prelude to conquest rather than a warning. The Terran Acknowledgement Protocols, Captain Yu announced, producing a data pad with official documents. A new framework for galactic cooperation that reflects the reality we have just revealed. The protocols appeared on the hall's display screens. Legal documents written in clear, simple language that left no room for misinterpretation. First, Kite read from the protocols. Formal recognition that humanity serves as the ultimate guarantor of galactic peace and security. All member species acknowledge that their continued existence depends on human restraint and protection. Several aliens nodded immediately. After what they had witnessed, this was simply stating an obvious fact. Second, Kite continued, establishment of the Human Advisory Council with permanent authority to intervene in any conflict that threatens galactic stability. This includes the right to impose solutions without debate or appeal. This was more controversial. Some aliens looked uncomfortable with giving humanity such direct power, but none dared to object openly. Third, Kite went on, mandatory conflict prevention protocols. All member species must submit dispute resolution requests to human mediators before considering military action. Failure to comply will result in immediate containment of all parties involved. General Kalthik raised a trembling hand. What does containment mean in this context? Admiral Insu-Yun answered. Quarantine. Any species that attempts to wage war without human authorization will be confined to their home systems until they learn better judgment. The threat was clear. Humanity would not tolerate unauthorized violence anywhere in the galaxy. Fourth, Kite continued reading, enhanced protection agreements. Humanity formally commits to defending all council members against external threats, natural disasters, and internal conflicts that exceed local capabilities to handle. This actually drew some positive reactions. The idea of guaranteed human protection was terrifying and comforting at the same time. And finally, Kite said, reaching the last item, the truth accord, no more lies about galactic history. No more pretending that peace comes from diplomatic wisdom rather than human restraint. The real story will be taught in schools across the galaxy so that future generations understand the true cost of the peace they inherit. The protocols were comprehensive and absolute. They established humanity not as rulers of the galaxy but as its caretakers. Protectors who would ensure that civilization continued to flourish. Chancellor Vexthara stood up slowly. Her crystal form was beginning to glow again, though more dimly than before. On behalf of the Kethian Dominion, she said formally, I accept these protocols completely. I also wish to formally apologize to humanity for my earlier statements. We were ignorant of the truth, and our ignorance led us to insult our greatest protectors. One by one, other delegates began to stand. Each offered their species' acceptance of the new reality. Some added their own apologies. Others simply acknowledged the truth that had been revealed. When the last delegate had spoken, Kite looked around the hall one final time. I want to be very clear about something, he said. Humanity does not want to rule you. We do not want to control you. We want you to be free to grow and learn and become everything you are capable of becoming. He paused, making sure everyone understood. But freedom requires responsibility. Peace requires wisdom. And wisdom requires understanding the true cost of the safety you have enjoyed. Dr. So-Min Lee deactivated the displays showing human military capabilities. The hall screens returned to showing the peaceful images of galactic cooperation. The choice going forward is simple, Kite said. You can accept the reality that humanity serves as your protector and work with us to build an even better future. Or you can pretend that what you witnessed today never happened and continue living in ignorance. He looked directly at Chancellor Vextara. But ignorance will no longer be tolerated from the leaders of galactic civilization. The truth is now known. How you choose to deal with that truth will determine whether your species has a place in the future we are building. The session was effectively over. Aliens began filing out of the hall in small groups, whispering quietly among themselves. Most looked stunned. Some appeared relieved. A few seemed almost grateful to finally understand the reality of their situation. Chancellor Vextara approached the human section before leaving. Her crystal form was glowing more brightly now, though still not at full strength. Ambassador Park, she said formally, the Kethian Dominion requests placement under formal human protection. We would consider it an honor to serve under your guidance. Kite nodded graciously. Request approved, Chancellor. Welcome to the future. As the aliens departed, Kite remained in the hall with his team. Dr. So-Min Lee was making notes on her datapad. Captain Nam was coordinating with human forces.